Okay, welcome everyone. Today you are attending the Tinkers Creek Watershed Community Meeting. It's 7 p.m., so we're going to get started. I'm going to turn it over to Jerry Maldonado of Prince George's County's Department of the Environment.
Good afternoon. I hope everybody can see me okay and hear me. My name is Jerry Maldonado, and I work for the Department of the Environmental Resources. The topic at hand is a very important topic. From time to time, the Department of the Environment in Prince George's County has to address watershed conditions, and we do assessments of our watersheds in the county. You may want to ask, what is a watershed? A watershed is typically, if you think of a bowl that contains water. So typically a watershed is constrained by the topography that contains basically all the runoff, and that defines your watershed. In this case, Tinkers Creek. Prince George's County has a large amount of geographical area, close to 400 square miles. I believe Tinkers Creek may be somewhere around 800 to 1,000 acres. So it's a fairly large watershed, and it has a lot of land use that has been changed through many decades. It used to be farming, and obviously got converted into residential, industrial, commercial. And we also do have Andrews Air Force Base that at the top portion of the watershed that drains, through Tinkers Creek. So you may wonder what the watershed study is for. So what we do is we look at the types of land use changes that may cause impairments in the watershed, and some of these impairments affect the water quality. In some cases, it could be as simple as in residential properties where you have pets and wildlife that contribute to a lot of bacteria, and that bacteria eventually ends up in the waterway and pollutes it. It may be also cases in certain watersheds where you have a lot of septic systems, and the pipe sewage hasn't reached those locations yet. So there are other factors as well affecting the watershed conditions, which is stormwater. Stormwater needs to be controlled. If it's not controlled, that causes wet yards in properties. It erodes the streams, and we lose sediments. And when we do the assessments, we typically coordinate our studies with EPA and the state of Maryland. And if there's excessive impairments, like in the case for this watershed, we have sediments as well as bacteria already as an issue of concern. So part of this presentation will be to help you guys as participants of this watershed. You live in the watershed, you play in the watershed, and you conduct all your activities in this watershed. We have certain programs in Prince George's County that are available for the public, property owners as well as businesses, where they can take advantage and help improve the condition of the watershed. And with that note, I'd like to go ahead and get this thing started, because the most important part is with the presenters. If we can move to the next slide, please. So we have Adriana, which will be the outreach specialist from Tetra Tech, that will be helping us navigate through this presentation. We have Ms. Carol Barth, which will be talking about trees and planting trees in your community. How can you help? How can you participate? As well as some pet waste management, some of the responsibilities for being a pet owner. That way we don't pollute our environment. Gwen Lee will be talking about the Raincheck Rebate Program, and she works for the Chesapeake Bay Trust, and they've been partners with Prince George's County for many years. They've been doing wonderful work all over the county. So hope that all of the residents here at Tinkers Creek will take advantage of that. And also we do have Sadie Dresser will be talking about the Stewardship Grant Program, which is another wonderful program that Prince George County has, where nonprofit organizations can actually apply for grants and to do, larger size type of projects in the community. Next slide, please. At this point, I will pass it on to Adriana. Adriana, I'm going to go ahead and go offline.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Okay, so before we really get dive deep into the content of this meeting, just want to go over some general housekeeping. So this meeting could be potentially very large. As you know, we didn't require registration, so we don't know how many of you are actually going to attend. And so that we can keep bandwidth at a manageable level and there's no delay, we recommend that you watch using your computer audio and not your video. So you listen to us and you can watch us, but you don't show your video. We also want to tell you that everyone's going to be muted except for the speakers. If you would like to ask a question, you can either type it into the chat window or raise your hand. Depending on the size of the meeting, we might suggest at the Q&A portion that you raise your hand, then we call on you, and we might tell you to go off mute and then ask your question directly to one of the presenters. Or depending, we might just read your question that you pose in the chat to the presenter. Again, we're not sure how large this meeting is going to be, and we want to keep it at a manageable level and make sure we minimize the disruptions. So if you are called on and you want to unmute, at the upper right hand corner, at least on my screen, I'm using the app on my laptop. There's a microphone, and right now mine looks like this. It doesn't have a line through it, so which means I'm speaking and you can hear me. If I click on it, then it's going to have a line through, and that's going to tell me that I'm muted. So if you're called on and you'd like to speak, you would unmute yourself that way. Also, while we're going through the presentation, because we don't want to interrupt the presenters and we want to get through the material and not take up too much time of this evening, we're trying to keep the presentation to about an hour. You can use reactions to show support for the speakers. So in your toolbar, there should be there's a smiley face with a hand, and you can show reactions for the speakers. You can do a thumbs up, a clap, a smile. And so then that way we know that you're engaged and you're, enjoying the presentation, learning the content, and, the presenter can move through the content. You can also, in the chat feature, you can also, when you're typing a question, there's other reactions that you could see and use if you so choose to. If you're having any AV questions, please type those questions in the chat box. We have some folks on here that can troubleshoot with you either through the chat box, or you can share your phone number and they can call you directly if you're having problems. One frequent issue that we find out is that someone's computer audio isn't turned all the way up. So at least again, at the top of my screen, I have 3 dots. I can click on those 3 dots and then I can see where my sound is, and I can make sure that my speakers are turned all the way up. So if you're having trouble hearing, you probably can't hear me right now, but then you can, there's a couple different features, and that's a typical one of turning up your speaker audio. And of course, we also shared the phone number. So if you're having issues with your computer, you can also dial in and listen. And also a reminder that this is a professional meeting that the Prince George's County Department of Environment is putting on. So we're recording this meeting and we're going to have it posted, and we're going to share it in a couple different venues. So we would like you to please be mindful of what you write into the chat box. And so the meeting organizers, if we hear something that's disruptive, we will force mute you. And if there is a significant disruption, we will remove people from the meeting. So let's just keep it friendly. And if you have a question for the presenters, we're definitely happy to address your question and share all this content. And then as a reminder to our speakers to minimize distractions such as ceiling fans and other noises. My dog's sitting next to me, so hopefully he doesn't start barking. So anyway, so we're going to move on. Okay, so first I'm going to talk about some basics about what is a watershed. Jerry kind of mentioned it already, that a watershed is an area of land that drains to a common body of water. So when it rains, all of the rainwater, snow, various things that are on the landscape are gathered with the water and they run downhill and make their way to the lowest point of the stream, river, or other body of water. When the water runs downhill, it picks up pollutants along the way and carries them to the stream. So in order to address the pollution in these rivers and streams, we need to institute changes on the land throughout the watershed to minimize the pollutants getting into the stream. And also just want to note that watersheds are nested. So here is a small watershed, here's a small watershed, here's a small watershed. When it rains, it runs into that stream. And then you could take all streams together and that's a larger watershed. So this picture is one large watershed and multiple small watersheds. Oh, before I go on, I just want to remind folks that we have put in the chat an attendance form. So we'd love to know who is attending and get you on some mailing lists. So our Tetra Tech organizers are going to continue to put that link for the attendance into the chat box. So please fill out the, it's a very brief, quick, should take you 30 seconds, and let us know who's here and what your email address is so that we can continue to share information with you in the future. Okay, so talking a little bit more about stormwater runoff. So stormwater runoff is a major cause of stormwater pollution in urban areas because it can carry trash, bacteria, heavy metals, and other pollutants from the urban landscape into nearby water bodies. So higher flows from heavy rains can also cause erosion and flooding in urban streams, damaging habitat, property, and infrastructure. So when you see trash, this trash is on the ground, where do you think that trash ends up when it starts raining? So here's some photos of trash in the landscape, and then here's a flash flood, and then after the flash flood, here's the trash is gathered at the low point. So as more and more people move to cities and towns, the stormwater runoff problem worsens because of the flattened and more impervious surfaces, lack of natural vegetation. These environments prevent precipitation from soaking into the ground. So all these pollutants in the stormwater can cause the loss of aquatic life, flooding, public health, safety issues, can diminish aesthetics, quality of life. So the stormwater can potentially pollute the local waterways, and then the water can be contaminated. You might not be able to eat the fish, then you have fish kills. And here's an example of a flash flood that has caused significant stream bank erosion and has caused sediment to go into the stream. The sediment then clogs the waterway, can block the sunlight, and then cause all of these issues that we see on the slide. Okay, so what are some common stormwater issues around your house, and what can you do to hopefully stop them? So even though you might not have control of what happens outside of your neighborhood, you do have control over what's going on your property. And there are some things that you can do to minimize stormwater pollution. So throughout this presentation, we're going to talk about what can you do? What activities can you take to help Tinkers Creek watershed, Prince George's County, and the Chesapeake Bay? What are the things that you can do? So here is a typical house, and it's raining. When it rains, it goes the rainwater goes onto the roof, and then usually down the gutter and onto the impervious land. So one of the things that you could do is direct your downspout that catches the water from your roof and put it towards the grass so that the grass can absorb the extra water rather than it running off quickly onto your driveway, onto the sidewalk, onto the street, into the storm drain, and eventually making its way into the Chesapeake Bay. So you can also plant trees where in bare spots in your yard where areas gather water. You can also follow fertilizer labels. You can fix any steep driveways and sidewalks and make sure chemicals don't enter the storm drains. And you can compost your yard waste, and don't dump yard waste into ditches that might clog the waterways. You could also park your car onto your lawn, and when you wash it, so that the chemicals don't wash off onto your driveway and onto the street, but that your lawn catches any of those chemicals. So there's a whole lot of information on the Department of Environment website. And we're going to go over some of the things that you can do to help minimize pollution. Okay, so what are some of the problems in Tinkers Creek? Why are we here talking to you guys? So Piscataway Creek, which includes Tinkers Creek, is impaired for bacteria and sediment. One of the things that we're going to talk about tonight is picking up after your dog, because pet waste is linked to bacteria. So by you picking up your pet's waste, you're also helping to minimize the pollution that's going into the Chesapeake Bay. The Chesapeake Bay is impaired for nitrogen, phosphorus, and suspended solids, and Prince George's County is required to reduce nitrogen, phosphorus, and suspended solids in all their county watersheds. So the county is planting trees and installing conservation practices throughout the county, but there's some things that you can do on your property to reduce the amount of these pollutants going into the Tinkers Creek watershed. So right now the watershed has a percent reduction goal of 42.6% for bacteria and 51% reduction for sediment. So the county is working hard to meet those goals, and one of those goals is communicating with you guys to tell you about what programs the county has and what things you can do to help minimize pollution in the watershed. Okay, and with that, I am going to turn it over to Carol Barth, who manages the tree relief program and the pet waste program for the county.
Good evening, and thank you for taking some time out to have us talk at you, but hopefully not just at you, but with you. So let's start with pet waste, and you can go ahead and switch the slide, Indiana. And there we go. So I talk to people at events, and a lot of times they have not thought about the magnitude of this issue, because you think about, it's just my little Fifi, you know, but what big impact can a natural substance like that have? I have a tiny little dog. Well, the thing is, of course, is that we have many, many dogs. And so as you see in this slide, together they're producing almost 57 tons of waste each day. So rather than picturing little Fifi the French poodle, we should be picturing a Godzilla-sized French poodle. When you add to that the fact that 40% of people say that they don't pick up after their dogs, you know, I suspect some people don't admit it, but let's say 40% is accurate. That leaves us with 45,300 pounds a day out in our environment and causing issues. All right, next slide. And again, to make the point here, looking specifically at Tinkers Creek, you can see that you have quite a few dogs within this watershed. And that's another reason why it doesn't just cause a problem when you're off down walking by the creek or whatever, but even when you let things sit in your yard, it rains everywhere. And as Adriana said, when things run off from our homes, it gets into the waterways. And so dog waste is a really serious problem. Next slide. And so first of all, let's just talk about the human health impacts. There are 60 different diseases or pathogens that we can catch just from coming into contact with dog waste. This is also, by the way, why it is not a good idea to compost or to use that waste as fertilizer. Plant-eating animals, your cows, your chickens, your goats, you know, we can use their manure as good fertilizer, properly handled. But carnivores like dogs, we have this whole disease issue. So that is a real problem. And of course, not just the human health, but your pets can get sick as well. You know, it says on the slide that these pathogens can remain in the soil for a very long time. There is a high paths in the Alps where nobody lives, nobody farms. Scientists have found bacteria from the guts of horses that are still there surviving in the soil that were placed there when Hannibal crossed the Alps and his horses did what animals do. So really, these substances and these critters can last a very long time. Next slide. Okay, so you know, I'm just not going to sugarcoat it. I'm just going to be real with you. The other problem with the pet waste, besides the health impacts directly, is that in urban areas, dog waste is the #1 food source for rats. So again, it's just going to be better for all of us and for our communities if we all take care of this. Next slide. All right, we're going to go to a little video that we put together on this issue. It's very quick. It's just a minute. I want to show it to you, though, because your civic association can also use this and share it with other organizations and citizens in the watershed. We're not hearing sound, Adriana.
Oh,
You'll have
Okay.
to close it and reshare
okay.
and then click on the audio.
Okay. Okay. Are you hearing that?
Not really.
All right. I see. Hold on.
We'll give it one more quick college try, and then if the technology gods are not kind to us, we'll move on.
Okay, here we go.
In 1 tiny gram of dog waste. The longer dog waste is left, the more dangerous it becomes. Dog waste isn't like other kinds of pollution. It attracts parasites and bacteria that can make people really sick. If owners don't clean up after their pets, that waste can end up in our waterways. If you think it won't follow you home, think again. There are grosser things than picking up after your dog.
I guess there are some things way nastier than picking up a dog's poop.
Good job, Daddy.
Scoop that poop.
Okay, did that work?
That worked.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'm going to go back to the presentation. All right.
So this is on our website. So if it's something that's on our YouTube channel, so you can direct people to it there.
Okay.
All right. All right. So now that you're all deathly afraid of dog poop, what do we do about it? You can dispose of it down the toilet because, of course, our systems are designed to handle that type of waste, but you cannot do that with the bags that people use to pick them up. So for most people, that's just not convenient. So at this point, the best alternative we have is to put it in the trash. As I said, we don't want to be trying to compost this. In home composting, you just can't get it hot enough to kill the pathogens. And we don't want to be trying to reuse it unless you have a very professional setup to create things from it. And we don't have that out and about. So this is what we've got. Think about recycling plastic bags that you're getting anyway. All right, move on. Okay, so we've already talked a bit about this. Again, this is really important. When we look at water quality, we see that pets are having a big impact, and it's not all the wildlife out there. So this really is one of those chores that is up to us. If we're going to keep our environment healthy for all of us, we need to take that extra step and be responsible pet owners. And of course, you can always check out our animal services division, and they have a lot of good programs and information also related to your pets on other aspects, like you can see by the little poster there. All right, next slide. All right, now we do have a program to provide pet waste stations to communities. Unfortunately, right now, we have run out of money, but we will accept applications. And then as funds come in, we'll go to the waiting list. So you'll get my contact information, and you can contact me if you're interested. You do want to think a little bit about this though, and organize within your community, because while we provide the station, we do not maintain them. That's up to the communities that get the stations. So you either need to pay for a service, or you need to organize volunteers. We also do this with municipalities, and in their case, they obviously can do that with their waste disposal staff or their park staff. So we have a lot of information. We're actually due to come out fairly soon with a guidebook for how communities can do their own really integrated pet waste programs and all the different things that you can do. Something you can think about if pet waste stations are a bit more than you can handle, we do have the signs that you see down at the bottom of the slide, just to remind people. And so we do make those available, and I still have those in stock, so you can contact me if you're interested. Again, there's an application to fill out for that. All right, next slide. And as I said, we have a lot of information. We have these infographics that print up nicely as posters. We have other signs. We have brochures that you can download. We even have a really good pet waste game. Of course, we haven't been doing in-person activities during COVID, but when the time comes and those open up again, we can loan you a copy of this game. It's a beanbag, and people try to guess where the right place to put that little beanbag poop is. It's extremely popular with the kids, and it's a great way to open up conversations on this issue, but in kind of a lighthearted way. All right, next slide. All right, I'm going to shift gear now, go to tree planting programs. We have a variety of programs to make it easier and more affordable to get trees out into our communities. Trees do so much for us. They're not just a nice to have, they're something that we need to have. And as we're experiencing a change in climate, it can be critical for air quality and human health, critical for water quality, and of course, just for livability. So all of our programs are for native trees. We also do native shrubs, because those give us the best environmental bang for the buck. It's the natives that support the ecosystem and give us those added values. So I'm going to very quickly go through the programs. Next slide. Okay, we've got some more good ideas about why to do it. Capturing carbon, I forgot to say that one. And of course, stormwater, we've already mentioned. Also, studies show that it reduces crime in communities. Communities with very large trees have less violence and less crime. So that's a good benefit. All right, let's go on. Tree relief, this is for planting in public areas. So it could be if your civic association has a playground, or you have a small park, or there's a similar kind of an area. Now, for a community-based project, you can get up to $5,000. For municipality, up to $10,000. It is a matching grant program, but we have figured it all out so that you can meet that requirement just with in-kind contributions and or volunteer hours. So it usually does not require much of an actual out-of-pocket expense, but it is, however, a reimbursement. Once everything is approved, you get the trees, you plant the trees, and then we give you the money back. Okay, the next slide. So we've got the link in here. I believe that's also going to be put into the chat. Now you see my phone number up there, but I would advise that instead you go by email, because I'm still remote, not in the office. And technology being what it is, I don't always trust the phone messages to roll over here. But if you fill out a very simple intent to apply form, we'll contact you, we'll do a consultation, and we'll move on from there. And we'll help you design it as well, if you need suggestions for what kinds of trees and where they can go. Next slide. Arbor Day Every Day is our program for schoolyards. It turns out that students that have a view of trees actually do better on standardized tests. And they also, like the rest of us, if just looking at trees or being around trees calms us. In less than 5 minutes, our muscle tension decreases, our blood pressure decreases. So again, this is something that we really need, and a lot of schoolyards are pretty barren. So this is a participatory program where we get the kids involved, as you can see in the picture, in taking care of the trees, learning about the trees, and helping to plant them. Next slide. So for this program, we just straight up buy the trees. So all we're asking from the school is that they provide the volunteers. So it can be students and teachers, it can be a parent group, whatever works. And of course, we will come back on all of our tree programs and check on how they're doing. So we need permission to come back and to keep an inventory of the trees and how they're faring over the years. All right, next. Now, sometimes either of those programs, we try to make them easy and accessible. Sometimes it's a little bit too much for a group to bite off right away. So in that case, we can do a tree demonstration program. So we'll buy, could be 5 shrubs, could be 8 trees. We will again find a public place where we can plant them, and we will come out and you would organize the folks to come, and we'll go over proper tree planting, have everybody get a little bit of a chance to get involved and do that, and get to know those trees that we're working with. And hopefully that would be a good way to start and get you teed up and ready for one of the other programs. Next. All right, those are the slides that I was covering, and now we're going to go on to the next segment. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, and thank you all for joining us. I'm so excited to be here with you tonight to talk more about the Prince George's County Rain Check Rebate Program. I'll also be joined by my colleague, Sadie Drescher, who will talk about the Prince George's County Stormwater Stewardship Grant Program. So before I dive too far into the Rain Check Rebate Program, I do want to explain the Chesapeake Bay Trust and our role in our partnership with the county to help administer this program. So as Jerry mentioned earlier, we've been partners with the county for over, I believe, 7 years now, and we have helped support them through administering these two programs on their behalf. So we help applicants through the entire process from project inception to project installation and completion. So for the Rain Check Rebate Program, a little background, this program essentially offers rebates to property owners to install any one of 7 different approved stormwater management practices on their property. And by installing these practices, these property owners also have the opportunity to receive a reduction on their Clean Water Act fee. This Clean Water Act fee is a fee that all property owners in the county pay, and it's based on the amount of impervious surface that is present on that property. And so all those fees go into this fund that helps support and fund programs such as the Rain Check Rebate Program. And so again, these funds are provided directly by the Prince George's County Department of the Environment and through this Clean Water Act fee that all property owners in the county pay into. And the goal of the program is really to reduce stormwater runoff, improve water quality, and improve our communities. And for receiving a rebate, and a rebate essentially is a partial or full refund that is provided by the county to the property owner. And this is after the pre-approval, the purchase, installation, and final inspection of the Rain Check Rebate practice that was installed. So for this program, there are some requirements that determine eligibility. And so I'll go over that first. First and foremost, the applicant must be the property owner or a nonprofit organization that has an agreement to complete a project on public property. The program is available to renters, but the landowner must apply on that renter's behalf and submit the application. So for this program, it's open to residential property owners. So this includes individual residences as well as individual members of a housing cooperative. Also eligible are commercial, industrial, and institutional property owners. And this includes multifamily dwellings such as apartment complexes, homeowner associations, condominium associations, civic associations, nonprofit organizations, and businesses to install these practices on their property. And as I mentioned earlier, nonprofit organizations that are installing projects on public property are also eligible for this program. There are a few other eligibility requirements listed here that I'll go over. First, the project must be in Prince George's County. We do have a few exclusions, and the first is that property owners within the city of Bowie are not eligible. The property owners in the city of Bowie pay a separate stormwater fee that is independent of the county fee, and therefore property owners within that city are not able to have access to these funds because they do not pay into that fund. We also have exclusions for the town of Cheverly, town of University Park, and city of College Park for tree plantings. Each of these towns and cities have a tree rebate reimbursement program that they run individually, and therefore they are able to apply for those programs within their towns and city, as well as any of the other Rain Check Rebate approved practices except for tree plantings. Second, the project must be an eligible Rain Check Rebate practice. I'll go over in more detail about the 7 different practices that are supported by the program. So it must be one of those, and then it must also follow the program guidelines and criteria. Depending on the practice, we have different requirements and guidelines that an applicant must follow in order to be eligible for a rebate. Third, the project should be completed within 12 months of submitting the application or receiving pre-approval for the project. This timeline is flexible, and we're always willing to work with the applicant to figure out, the best timeline for them. And as we know, with the pandemic, there have been many obstacles that have, interrupted life. And then finally, the project is eligible as long as it's not required under an existing permit or regulatory requirement. So for example, if you're doing some type of development, new development, and you're required to install various stormwater best management practices, if that is a requirement, that would not be eligible under this program. So in these next few more slides, we'll talk briefly about each of the rain check rebate practices that are supported by the program. This is an overview of the 7 different ones that the program supports. And as always, there's a link to our website as well, where you can find more detailed information about each of the practices. So the first 2 practices are rain barrels and cisterns, and essentially both are containers or tanks that collect and temporarily store rainwater from your rooftop. And a rain barrel is essentially a smaller version, whereas a cistern is larger capacity. It can hold more runoff from your rooftop. The collected water in these containers can be reused for non-potable purposes. So watering the lawn, watering your trees, anything that is not used for consumption. The second practice is rain gardens, and rain gardens are a planted shallow depression, and it contains water-tolerant native plants. So essentially, the design of a rain garden is created in order to capture and temporarily store stormwater runoff. It allows it to soak into the ground and infiltrate and slows it down, versus if you had bare lawn, the stormwater runoff would hit the ground, a little bit would absorb and then run off of the surface once it's reached its capacity. The next practice that's supported by the program is urban tree canopy. And as Carol mentioned earlier about the benefits of trees, just to reiterate, there are many benefits for planting trees, and that include catching falling rain, filtering out pollutants, and absorbing stormwater runoff. Trees are able to they have very deep root systems and therefore are able to absorb a lot more runoff compared to grass or lawn. There are many co-benefits of trees as well, and that includes cleaning polluted air and providing habitat and food to birds and other important species and pollinators. The next 2 practices supported by the program I'll talk about are pavement removal and permeable pavement. So pavement removal is essentially what it sounds like. You are removing impervious surface, so your traditional concrete or asphalt on your property, and then replacing it with grass, native plants, or permeable pavement if you still need a hard surface on your property. And so permeable pavement is a specific type of pavement that actually allows the stormwater runoff to soak into the ground. So compared to your traditional concrete or asphalt, the water, when it rains, it hits that surface and it flows off and into the sidewalk, into the road, and down the storm drain. Whereas for permeable pavement, the rainwater will hit that surface and it'll actually be able to absorb into the ground versus flowing off that surface. And then last but not least, the final practice supported by the program are green roofs. And green roofs are a vegetative roof system that captures and temporarily stores rainwater in a lightweight engineered soil. So the picture you see here is of the town of Forest Heights town building, where they actually did install a green roof. And from the green roofs, the water that's stored there is taken up by the plants and released back into the atmosphere. And so compared to a roof that does not have a green roof, the water is being absorbed and able to soak in versus running off into the gutter, down the downspout and out onto the land, and then into the storm drain and into our waterways. So moving on to rebate amounts for this program, there's a lot of information on here, so I will try to walk through it as clearly as possible. The maximum rebate amount depends on the type of property that you have. And so for residential properties, the maximum rebate amount for the lifetime of the property is $4,000. And then for all other property types, so commercial, industrial, and institutional properties, the maximum lifetime rebate amount is $20,000. And For each specific practice that an applicant were to install, we also have rebate allowances based on the size of the project. And for some of these practices, we also have minimum size requirements. So you'll see the blue column here that lists out the different project types. The green column are the rebate allowances and minimum size requirements for residential property owners. So individual residents or individual residents of a housing cooperative. And then the orange column here are for all other property types. So the commercial, industrial, and institutional properties, multifamily dwellings, homeowner associations, condominium associations, and et cetera, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation. So for urban tree canopy, an applicant is able to receive $150 per tree in a rebate, and there is a minimum size requirement of at least 5 feet tall when planted. For rain barrels and for cisterns, the rebate allowance is $2 per gallon stored. For rain barrels for individual residences, there's a minimum size requirement of 50 gallons. For all other property types, the minimum size is 100 gallons. For cisterns, the minimum size for individual residences are 250 gallons. And then for all other property types as well, the minimum is 250 gallons. For rain gardens, the rebate allowance is $10 per square foot. And the minimum size requirement there is 100 square feet for all property types. For pavement removal, it's $6 per square foot with no minimum for individual residents, and then a minimum of 400 square feet for all other property types. For permeable pavement installations, an applicant can receive up to $12 per square foot with no minimum for individual residences and a minimum of 400 square feet for all other property types. For green roofs, it's $10 per square foot with a minimum size requirement of a 4th roof retrofit for individual residences. And then for all other property types, it's $10 per square foot for less than 6 inches of planting material, or $20 per square foot for over 6 inches of planting material. And the minimum size requirement is the same at 1/4 roof retrofit. So just a brief overview of the rain check rebate process. What you see here is generally what we would do on a normal basis. Obviously, the pandemic has, we've had to adjust and be more flexible, and things have slightly changed from this. But normally, what we recommend is to first review the application instructions and the program guidance document that we have on our website. That outlines in detail all of the rain check rebate practices, what they are, and their purpose. And then we also have instructions on the application process and how you would submit that application and in the process for receiving the rebate. Secondly, you should determine what practices are suitable for your property. And this is where we at the Trust and I can help you if you want to participate but you're unsure what practices are best suited for your property. We can help assess your site and figure out the best solution for you if you're addressing a certain issue or trying to find a solution for something that you're experiencing on your property. The second step, once you've have a good idea of what you want to do, is to fill out and submit the online application. And that is an online application process. We do have a paper form as well if that is preferable, and you can find that on our website. Once we receive your application, we would normally schedule a pre-installation site visit with you. We would go out to your property, talk with you about the process, talk with you about your project. With the pandemic, we've moved that to be virtual site visits. So that's always an option. And then once you have completed that site visit with us, we will reach out to you and follow up with you to obtain any required documentation. Depending on the type of project that you plan to install, it may require different information that we need ahead of time before you install your project. And this process is to receive pre-approval from us for your project. Pre-approval helps ensure that your project will meet the qualifications of the program, and then also provides confidence that you'll get that rebate once you've completed the project. Once you receive pre-approval from us, then you'll go ahead and install the practice, again within 12 months, but we're flexible with that timeline as well. And at any time during the process, if you need help or assistance, we're always here to help you through and address any obstacles that you might face that come up. And once the project has been installed, normally we would schedule a post-installation site visit. Again, we haven't been doing any in-person site visits at this time, but we can do virtual site visits with you. And then once that has been completed, you will then submit the final project documentation to us. So for projects, we will need photos, measurements, receipts, and invoices for costs for the work. And once we have all that information from you, we'll finalize your application and send it to the county, who will then process your rebate and send it out to you. So this page here talks about, has a link to our website and lists a few items that are on it. So we have a lot of example photos, you have fact sheets, guidelines, maintenance information for these practices. The county also recognizes that sometimes applicants will need resources and help to find contractors who can do these installations and do this work. So we do have a list of contractors on our website that have completed a county-sponsored training course for this program. So they can, so you know that they're familiar with the program and have been through this training. We also have our application instructions and online application document, as well as frequently asked questions that come up. And then we also, I've also listed my contact information here for anyone who has questions or want to follow up more or talk more about the Rain Check Rebate program and potential projects on your property. All right, next I will pass it off to my colleague Sadie Drescher to talk about the Stormwater Stewardship Grant Program.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Hi, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. I'm Sadie Drescher. I work at Chesapeake Bay Trust. I'm Director of Restoration Programs. And we've been partnering with Prince George's County, as Jerry mentioned earlier, for the last 7 to 8 years. So it's really wonderful to see the rebate program that's offered to the residents and the businesses. And then if you wanted to think about a little bit bigger project, kind of along the similar scales, this grant program offers that. So look, usually Jerry and I and Carol are working on this next year's request for proposals, so call for projects, and usually we're looking for water quality projects similar to what Wynn talked about, but a little larger scale. We're always focused on tree planting. Everybody can love the shade of a tree and all the benefits that they provide, so we'll probably provide that again. And then again, what projects you think might be interesting to you for citizen engagement. Next slide, please, Wynn. And so eligible applicants are nonprofits, so different than the programs before. And we've supported about 80 projects. Again, this is all Prince George's County Department of the Environment funds that come through the Chesapeake Bay Trust, and kind of that's what we do, grant making. And so we're happy to provide that service and issue the grants and manage them and work with the county throughout the process. So about 80 grants for about $8 million over the last 7 years. And the county has just been so generous and so thoughtful to provide these funds right to the municipalities and nonprofits that can use the funds directly. And there's examples of projects on our website, but I won't go into too much detail. Next slide, please. And so past project ideas, if you're wondering who else has done this, what worked, what didn't work, who did you use, who did you work with, there's fact sheets about other projects that have been supported and a list of projects and who was awarded and how much and things like that. And of course, I've been managing this program working with Jerry since the very beginning, so you can always reach out to me. We do site visits, phone calls, and think of ideas with you. Next slide, please. And here's just a picture of our website where you can find all the information, and they'll be in the chat. And so again, just wanted to let you guys know about this program, Prince George's County Stormwater Stewardship Grant Program, another resource for you, and happy to talk with you more about that. And yep, that's my contact information, and easy to get in touch with by email and by phone. And again, a lot of information on our website. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you, Sadie and Wen. Also, want to remind folks that we are going to leave a few minutes for questions. So if you have any questions, please type them into the chat. We've also been sharing throughout the presentation. Again, the focus of this presentation is what you can do in your community, in your yard, all these great programs that are available to you. And we've been posting those links, tons of links into the chat. So please utilize them if you're interested. And we've also been posting contact information so you can reach out to the presenters afterwards. We've also posted an attendance survey. So we'd love to see, find out more about who's attending, and so that we can put you on some mailing lists. And in a few minutes, we're going to be posting an evaluation survey so that you can give us some feedback about this presentation, and then we can work to improve information that we're sharing with you in additional community meetings, virtual, in person, and what sort of information you're looking for, what other sort of programs. So there's some information you can share with us in those evaluation forms, and we're going to put that up in a few minutes. But we have a couple more things just to share with you, and so we'll move forward in the presentation. And again, the purpose of this is your role in restoration, that you can help the county, you can help your neighborhood, you can help your family, your neighbors, your friends, and help prevent stormwater pollution. You can pick up after your pet, you can plant trees, you can install rain barrels, you can leave grass clippings on the lawn, don't litter, you can participate in cleanups, you can, you and your community can apply for a tree relief funds through the grant program. Your school can plant and maintain trees through Arbor Day Every Day. You can apply through the rain check rebate, the stormwater stewardship. There's so many things. And there's also cleanups. And this picture that you show on the slide is Growing Green with Pride. That was actually a cleanup that the county advertised on May 1st. And I found that through the county has lots of ways for you to stay informed. So they have a Facebook page, they have Twitter, and they have Instagram. All of these pictures are in recent posts from their various social media pages. So you can subscribe to their the various social media accounts and be involved and be knowledgeable about their programs, their activities, cleanup events, adopt a pet events. And also a shout out to the people that work in the county, the Department of Public Works and Transportation. And also, it's also a great way for you, again, to give feedback to the county and let them know, you know, do you want some more information about the programs, or what are sort of the needs that you need in your community? You can also be an extra set of eyes for the county. So there's a lot of ways, again, for you to give back some feedback to the county. So there's the county click. I think you just pick up the phone and dial 311, or you can dial that number. There's also a couple links where you can submit some information to the county online. And so there might be a whole host of things that you would like to share with the county: an abandoned vehicle, there's an animal running around the neighborhood, flooding and drainage problems. You might have a question about the foam-free ban, or maybe there's someone who's not following it, illegal dumping, litter, so many things. The pictures on the slide, this is interesting. On May 12th, just I guess 6 weeks ago, it was reported that there was some dumping. This picture is actually taken in your watershed, in the Tinkers Creek watershed. Someone reported it, and the county went and cleaned it up. And then within a couple weeks, this is a recent picture on the right, in the same area, it was cleaned up, and now there's signage with a $30,000 fine about dumping. So if someone is caught dumping, it's a $30,000 fine. And this, I believe, was notified through a county resident to let them know that, hey, there's a problem, and this is where you can help. You can be an active person and help here clean and minimize pollution in your watershed. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Carol.
Okay, thanks, Adriana. And I don't want to run on long. We do want to have time for questions, but just to give you an idea of some other things that we do have available, we don't have time to talk about all of them in depth. But we do have a litter prevention program. There's an app that you can use to report the cleanups and such that you do. We have different programs for helping communities do things like litter drain, storm drain stenciling, comprehensive cleanups. And of course, we're available to do presentations like this, to attend one of your meetings and hear what you want to talk about and all that good kind of stuff. And someday we'll get back to interactive exhibits at in-person things. That'll be coming. Next slide. Just wanted to let you know that a couple of the programs we haven't mentioned tonight is Climate Action Plan. That is ongoing. Please look that up. We're looking for resident experts to participate in that. We also actually work with the Prince George's County Master Gardeners Program. Esther Mitchell is the coordinator for that program, and she works for me. So we have a lot of great things going on there. We can help with community gardens, composting, school gardens. And then for all the things we've talked about tonight, here you see contact information, and all of that is going into the chat as well. So just to give you a little bit of a picture, we couldn't cover it all tonight, but those are some of the other things that are going on.
Okay, so that concludes the content of our presentation. We ended right on time at 8 o'clock, but we can stick around for a few minutes if anybody has any questions. So please raise your hand or type your question in the chat. We've also posted the evaluation form. So again, please use that to provide some feedback. Let us know what was helpful, what you could use some more information on. And of course, we've also posted that this meeting is being recorded, and we are going to be posting the meeting and a copy of the slides on that website that you see in the chat. We can also share this recording and a copy of the slides with your community if you would like to share some information and hopefully get your community involved in one of these programs. And maybe you'd like to install some pet waste stations or get your community involved in some of the rain check rebate or tree relief or Arbor Day every day for your local schools. So go ahead and type any questions you have in the chat or raise your hand. And if there's no questions, and I don't see any, so we're gonna go ahead and conclude, but please do click on the evaluation form, give us some feedback. And we really appreciate that you attended tonight and you took some time out of your day, and hopefully this information was helpful, and we're glad that you could join us. Do any of the speakers have anything else to add, or shall we go ahead and conclude the meeting?
Hi, Adriana. This is Jerry. I'd just like to thank all the presenters. It was a wonderful reminder of all the wonderful things that you all do, the partners on the different programs that we have in the county. Obviously, the residents for Tinkers Creek, they should take advantage of these programs, and that will help our watershed and improve the environment, as well as make their community a lot more pretty. So congratulations to all of you, and really appreciate the time, taking your time for this day. It's definitely very hot outside today, so stay hydrated and cool. Thank you.
Thanks so much to our presenters, and thank you for joining us. And we're going to conclude, and we hope you have a great rest of your night. Thank you.